action. Welcome all you movie kings and queens to the Real Gay Movie Show. I'm your host, Mike Lovins, and as always, I'm joined by the fabulous Ryan Provost.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Ryan, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. How are you doing?
I am wonderful. Well, here we are, the second episode.
We made it.
All right, so it is that time of year. It's Oscar season.
Yes.
Are you ready? Yes. Are you ready to talk about some of these Oscar-nominated movies?
Oh my gosh, Mike. I'm so ready.
So tonight we're going to talk specifically, at least, about the 9 Best Picture movies.
Yes. We've seen them all.
We've seen them all, some of them multiple times.
I don't think I have. I think I've only seen them all once.
Well, you've still seen them.
I have. I've at least read the Wikipedia articles on them.
Well, that's hopefully some of the folks that are listening tonight, hopefully they've seen some of these movies too.
I think they have.
Well, let's hope so, because
yes,
tonight is going to be the assumption that they have. We will probably be getting into some spoiler territory on these movies.
Girl, if you don't want to know what happens, go see the damn movie. You got some time.
You got some time. The Oscars are a little less than a week away.
You don't got that much time.
You can go see a few of them and still have time to come back and listen to this before you watch the Oscars.
But listening to this is mandatory. We are not telling you not to do that.
Absolutely. It is a must.
Required listening.
Required. So Ryan, what do the Oscars mean to you?
Mike, I've always loved the Oscars. It's the gayest event of the year. It's our Super Bowl. It's got the pageantry. It's got people in beautiful outfits, dresses, tuxedos, looking great, looking fabulous. It's got people with their hopes up that they're going to win something, and then almost all of them don't.
They get Susan Lucci'd.
Everything that we hope for and live for in the gay community. It's just a lot of fun. It's just a formal, fun, exciting event. I've always loved it. When I was a kid, in addition to watching the Oscars, I always watched Joan Rivers' pre-Oscars show where she interviewed everyone, asked them who they were wearing, and then her post-show where she ripped apart everyone for looking like trash, even though they were wearing all these expensive dresses. It's always been something that I've loved so much.
Do you remember the Bjork swan dress? Was that the Oscars?
Remember it. We stuffed it and ate it for dinner the next day. It was outstanding.
Awesome. For sure, it's the pageantry.
Yeah.
The celebration of art and to some degree talent.
To some degree, correct.
Yeah, and sometimes I think the awards can get a little political, especially last year. It was, what was it? Hashtag Oscars white or something like that. It was,
well, the Oscars have definitely, evolved over the years. They have celebrated different types of movies over time, and it's been really cool to see different types of movies I don't think traditionally would have gotten recognized by the Oscars starting to get some of that love and get some of that recognition. Especially now that they've opened up the nominations for Best Picture to be more than just 5 nominees. About 10 years ago, they did that. And so you get to see a wider representation. Still not as wide as I would like, but a pretty wide representation of movies being recognized at the Academy Awards.
I agree. And last year, for the winner of the Best Picture,
one of the winners, because they announced La La Land first.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then Moonlight.
But the official winner,
right,
was a movie about people of color and LGBT. So, that's a pretty good double whammy right there, I think.
Yeah. It was kind of the opposite of the way things usually go. The gay black people got to take something away from the white people. So that was pretty cool to see that. That's not usually how things go.
Not usually, no.
No.
Well, what do you say we go ahead and start running down these movies?
Let's do it. Let's dive right in.
All right, going in deep. First movie is Call Me By Your Name. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this movie?
Well, Mike, this is the classic Twink meets Daddy. Twink falls in love with Daddy. Twink then has an awkward encounter with a peach. but then comes back around to Daddy. Twink and Daddy spend a romantic weekend away, and then Daddy leaves Twink for a woman. Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, I'll tell you, I was really looking forward to this movie. I thought the movie was beautiful. It was artistic. It's definitely a movie that any gay person should see, and I definitely think that that the straight people out there should see this too.
For sure. I mean, the straight people in my theater were a little uncomfortable when he had his way with the peach. But other than that, they seemed to be really into it.
They all went home and tried it.
Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
This movie was good, but there had to have been some shade that you can throw right now.
Yeah, I could throw some shade. So here's the thing, Mike. My thing, I don't like these really art house kind of movies. And so when you have, there was a scene where they were cutting from one scene to the next. And in the middle of it, they just went to focusing on some gravel staircase with rain flowing down it. And I'm sure there's an artistic reason for why that was included, but I don't get it. It's not for me. That kind of thing just doesn't do it for me. It's a little too art house. I wish it had taken itself a little less seriously. So Mike, who slayed this movie?
Well, all of the performances were great, but I have to go with Michael Stuhlbarg. He is the guy that played the dad, and I think I'm pronouncing his name right.
Mm-hmm.
He played a father that any child, and especially any gay child, would love to have. There is a scene where they have a bonding, and the dad is giving this monologue about a story that happened with him in his life, and some people consider it kind of a coming out moment for the father too. But man, he really he slayed it.
Yeah, he was really good. Was he nominated for the Oscar for this?
No, that is a snub.
That is a snub. He should have gotten it just for that conversation that they had.
I agree.
That was awesome.
What about a no ma'am here?
No ma'am. Well, I'll give a no ma'am to a no ma'am, which was the girlfriend. The girl who played the girlfriend. I think she could have done a better job of actually portraying some sort of conflict about, like, she really seemed into Elio, the twink. She was really into him. And then after he was not really feeling the relationship anymore, she was just kind of like, okay, it's fine. I wish I had seen more of a struggle in her to deal with that disappointment, maybe.
Well, at one point she even says something about "don't break my heart" or something like that.
Right.
And then she seems to just be like, okay, great, I love you, you're still my friend.
Exactly. No, that's not how that works. She needs some time.
She needs some time.
Yeah.
So, what would you rate this movie?
What would I rate James and the Pregnant Peach?
Yes.
Okay. I was initially a little lower on it when I came out of the theater. It just isn't my sensibility.
Yeah.
I don't, gays do not come after me, do not come for me. I like the movie. Technically, really great, beautifully shot, which if you're going to shoot a movie in Italy, has to be, right? Performances were all great. Armie Hammer, Timothée Chalamet were amazing, especially Timothy.
Yeah.
For carrying a movie playing a twink. I haven't seen that happen since a few Helix Studios movies I've watched recently. So he did really well, but I'm going to give it a 3. It's a get it girl for me. I mean, did really well. Did everything it was trying to do. Not quite my sensibility when it comes to movies, but very solid, very well executed, very well done for what it was trying to do, and a really good story deep down. So I'm going to give it a get it girl, 3 reels.
All right. Very, very fair there. Well, I'm starting off big. I gave this movie a 4 reels.
For reals.
For reals.
This is for reals.
This was highly anticipated on my end. And for me, it met my expectations and more. I really enjoyed the story and the scenery. And I had listened to the audio book of this. So after having Armie Hammer tell me the story. I couldn't wait to see it on the screen, so I loved it.
Okay.
All right, so moving on. The next movie that is nominated is The Darkest Hour. Tell me about it.
Y'all, this is a boring fucking movie. You don't need to see it. If you're going to miss any of our Best Picture nominees this year, The Darkest Hour is the one. They already have a damn movie about Dunkirk. You don't got to see this one. This movie exists solely to get Gary Oldman his Oscar. So if you want to see a grown-ass man full of makeup just acting his ass off, then go see this movie. Otherwise, just skip it. Anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Mike?
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with you 100%. It is definitely one of the most boring movies I've seen this year. To me, it felt like a PBS special on, on the big screen.
Right. Those don't belong on the big screen. There's a reason there's a PBS.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd rather probably just stay home and watch Downton Abbey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what you should do.
Yeah. So I'm sure that there's plenty of shade to be thrown here then.
There sure is, Mike. So my shade is, how long are we going to have to wait until one of these historical movies puts a gay person in it? There were gay people in England. There's a scene where Winston Churchill is on the train asking just some common folk about their thoughts on World War II. And should we, negotiate with Hitler or should we fight? And everyone's giving their thoughts. And there wasn't one queen to be like, oh, hell no, we're going after her.
There was at least one.
There was one, and they never put him in the movie. And it's one of those things where it wouldn't even take you out of the movie. You knew they existed.
Right. I mean, I think gay started in England.
Yeah, for sure. It originated. There. But no, I mean, and just the fact that this whole movie exists just for one performance, essentially. I mean, come on.
Right. And I would say that if anybody slayed in this movie, it's that one performance. It's Gary Oldman. He's a chameleon.
Yeah.
And but you're right. This movie was just a showcase piece for Gary Oldman.
Right. Look how well he can act.
Right.
It reminds me a lot of a couple years ago, The Revenant. A lot of people were talking about how that was Leo's chance to get an Oscar because he can show himself living out in the wilderness and getting mauled by a bear and all this kind of stuff, and how great he was acting in that role. And I think this was the same thing for Gary Oldman. Look at how well he can portray this massive historical figure. And it was almost kind of biographical,
right,
in that sense, but without going full biography.
So would you say that, was there any no ma'ams in this movie?
For me, the no ma'am of the movie, there's a part in it where Winston Churchill is reaching out to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, to have a conversation with him. And whoever the actor who did FDR's voice, he basically just did that kind of caricature.
Yeah.
We will fight them on the beaches of Normandy. We will go kick their asses wherever they may be. He was doing that kind of cartoon version of FDR.
Right.
And it just took me out of it. I almost started cracking up when he was on. I was like, really? That's especially seeing Gary Oldman like killing it as Churchill and then have this, unseen asshole just doing an impression.
Right.
That took me out. That was such a thing. It just took me out of the movie a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
So let's rate this one. Let's rate The Darkest Hour.
I'm going to give it 2 reels.
Okay.
Now, this needs work.
Uh-huh.
But I think that people should decide if they want to see it and then decide what they think about it on their own.
Right. I mean, listen. Gary Oldman killing it alone makes it a 2 reel movie.
Right.
I'm giving it 2 reels for that reason. It's not a disaster. There's a reason it's getting some award love, maybe a little too much.
I would agree with that.
But yeah, it needs some work. You can't just, one actor's performance does not a great movie make.
I feel like really the best actor nomination is probably deserved, but best picture, probably not.
Nope, not at all.
So speaking of Dunkirk, the next movie on the list is Dunkirk. So
Go figure.
we're gonna go from talking about Dunkirk to talking about the movie Dunkirk. So tell us a little bit about that one.
Listen, y'all. Harry Styles is all grown up, and he is fine. All those One Direction boys, and now he's acting, and that's great. And it's a World War II movie. It's on the beach. It's a beautifully shot movie. Christopher Nolan directed it. One of our best directors now. Lots of great performances. Really interesting way to tell the story of Dunkirk. I know it was released during the summer, and that's usually when the big action, crazy blow up movies are released. Right. And so it was really cool to have a movie that was, more of a historical drama that was really well made, really well shot. And that's Dunkirk. What are your thoughts, Mike?
I'm going to echo you on a lot of that. I thought that this movie was beautifully shot, and I loved that we got to take this movie to the sea, to the land, and to the air. It was like the Army, Navy, and Marines all together in there. Mm-hmm. Air Force, what have you. So one of the things that I really appreciated about this movie is even though we're in the land and in the air and on the beach, it still felt focused.
Right.
Where, against a movie like Darkest Hour, this movie, it starts right at the start of the battle and it ends at the end of the battle. I mean, that is the movie. I think that's a really interesting way to structure a movie like this.
Right. Well, Darkest Hour was focused on a performance.
Right.
Dunkirk was focused on a story and how the characters all reacted to this, very grave situation.
And, and the difference too can be seen where Dunkirk did not have any actors nominated because it really was, even though I think you did kind of have a lead, it was more of an ensemble cast.
Right.
And so that really worked well for this movie.
Exactly.
But there's got to be some shade.
Always. Yeah. My shadiest take on this movie. So like you mentioned, Mike, there's 3 different phases to the movie. There's what's going on the beach. There's the fighter pilots. And then there's the civilians traveling to Dunkirk on their boats to save the soldiers. I feel like there could have been just a whole movie just with the boats. I wish that it had just been focused on civilians, or even just that one civilian boat with Mark Rylance going to the beach to save the soldiers, because that would have been cool because they wouldn't have known what they were getting themselves into. And I think it would have made the Cillian Murphy character, the soldier who they rescue, who's super afraid, who's terrified, who's telling them to turn around, who's telling them not to go. That would have made it even more dreadful. Like, oh my gosh, what are we getting ourselves into? Right. What are we going towards? So I think that 1/3, I guess, of the movie, if you had taken the rest out and just made it that, even though that would have meant significantly less One Direction boys in it, I think that would have been a much more interesting movie. I think it would have made it much higher. I would have been much higher on it had that been the movie.
Maybe they need to do like a Lion King 1.5, do a Dunkirk 1.5, where it's just all from the perspective of the guys on the boats.
I think that's the first time anyone said they need to do a Lion King 1.5. It's not what people think of. Lion King was good. Let's do a sequel. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Although they are doing it again.
They are doing it again.
Yeah. Okay, so Mike, who slayed this movie?
So you mentioned him actually already. Mark Rylance. He was the father that was piloting the boat that they focused on. He's an acclaimed actor, and I thought that the emotion that he brought to not only being a father, but also taking care of this other boy that came along and helped out, and then also having to reel in Cillian Murphy's character and try and calm him down and stuff like that. He displayed a lot of different emotions really well.
Yeah, he was really strong. I'm surprised he wasn't nominated for this.
That is a surprise, actually. What about No Ma'am?
So my No Ma'am of this movie, okay, Tom Hardy, wherever you are. You don't have to wear a mask every movie you're in. Remember, Mike, he was Bane, and he had
Right.
that mask on the whole time.
Yeah, and in Mad Max, he had that metal gear on his
Yes,
face.
yes. And now he's going to be in Venom, so he's going to be covered. His entire face will be covered. That movie. So what, Tom? Stop. You have a beautiful face. I don't know if someone picked on him too much when he was a kid, and now he's all self-conscious. But Tom, show your face. It's fine.
Right,
It's fine. They can't hurt you now.
And he's got those great DSLs.
Oh my God. We're getting off the rails. What are you gonna rate this one, Mike?
I'm I'm giving it 2.5. I know that's not going to be very popular with you.
Wow.
I'm giving it 2.5 reels.
Wow.
Because it was beautifully shot and it was a good movie. I personally felt like it though. It maybe could have been a little quicker paced.
Okay. Well, I am giving it a little bit. I'm a little higher on it than you are, Mike. I'm giving it a 3 reels.
All right.
Get it, girl.
Get it, girl.
Just because I'm such a big Chris Nolan fan, I don't think he's capable of making a bad movie.
He's kind of hit or miss for me sometimes.
No, he speaks to my movie going sensibilities. My favorite movie of all time is The Dark Knight. I love Memento. I loved The Prestige.
Oh, I did. I loved that one a lot, actually.
He's just his eye for movies just really speaks to me. Having said that, this is probably my least favorite Nolan movie. Because maybe I have a little World War II fatigue.
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't as interested in this particular story. Maybe if he had told the story in a different way, I would have liked it more. But still, if anyone asked me, should I see this movie? Yes, go see it. It's a solid, good 3 reels. Get it, girl.
Get it, girl. All right, so let's go from Get It, Girl to Get Out.
Get Out.
Tell us a little bit about what Get Out is about.
Okay, so in Get Out, this African-American gentleman is dating his white girlfriend, and she is taking him to meet the family out in the woods. Never go in the woods. Never go in the woods to meet a family. That's bad.
Rule number 1.
But he starts to notice that things are off, wondering if he's paranoid. And it turns out he does have a right to be paranoid. He should be paranoid because things get pretty bad. The title of the movie really does give it away. You should get out.
Get out.
Get out, girl. But yeah, so Mike, what are your thoughts on it?
It gives you a message without bludgeoning you.
For sure.
This movie has also a lot of great comedic elements. It helps, I think, that it's written and directed by somebody who's primarily known as being a comedian.
Yeah, Jordan Peele.
Right.
Of Key and Peele fame.
Key and Peele.
Yeah.
So I like the way, though, that they had a side character that could pop in and out to provide that comic relief.
His TSA friend.
Yeah. It allowed the suspense and the horror and stuff like that to be focused as the main part of the story, but every once in a while I'll bring in those comic elements.
Yeah. What was great about him, what was his character's name again?
I think it was
Rod.
Rod. Yeah.
Rod. Yeah. So Rod was great because Rod almost acted like, how sometimes you're watching a horror movie and you just want to scream.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Get out of there. They're going to kill you. Like, he was that voice. He was basically acting as the audience, but he actually, whereas we just scream at a screen that can't respond to us, he actually was on the phone with the main character. Like, oh no, these people are crazy. There's something's not right. You need to get out of there. And so that was really, I thought that was really a clever way to incorporate that into a movie. Like, this character who kind of represents the audience and is so funny. And so that I thought was a really cool thing to add in that you don't always see in horror movies.
Right. I agree. So tell me, did you have any shade to throw at this movie at all?
You know what, Mike? I sure don't. But this movie is so good that I want to throw some shade at a movie I truly despised. So this movie was so good, like you said, at getting across some messages in a really great, subtle way through some imagery,
Right.
really speaking to some powerful social messages that resonate in the moment. And I don't know if any of y'all saw the movie Mother by Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah, I avoided that one.
Yeah, that one is terrible. That one is like he came out, took a hammer, and beat you across the head with a message he was trying to tell you. And so I know it's supposed to be my shadiest take, but my shadiest take is another movie because this movie is so good at using imagery, using some things that all of us kind of understand socially to convey some really powerful social messages about race and about where we are as a country with racial issues, considering where we've come from in the past. There are some allusions to the slave trade in the
Right.
scene with the bingo cards. There was, I feel like just the setting of being out in this house that kind of looks like it's
a
on a
plantation.
plantation, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they have help, and all their help there are African Americans. Like, it really brought up all these images that you only think of in the past to remind you that this stuff wasn't that long ago. And so I really liked how subtle that was because it was poignant and very powerful in how they try to convey those messages, where other films just struggle with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So who slayed this movie for you? Who slayed it?
So I think the person that slayed in this is definitely Daniel Kaluuya. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Don't quote me on that. But the man seems to have come from out of nowhere, and man, he just expressed so much emotion in his facial characteristics and just even like just conversations with people, and he'll give that kind of like a little twerk. Not twerk. He'll give a quirk or something like that, but just like you can just see it on his face, like is this really happening?
Well, he definitely, with his eyes and his facial expressions.
Yeah.
The first time I saw him was in an episode of Black Mirror, and in that episode and also in this movie, what he does really well is you can see there's just a lot going on in his mind through how he expresses himself in his eyes. Just, you can see he's working out what's going on. What am I getting myself into? How am I going to get myself out of this? Do I really trust this person? And he does such a great job in this movie, as well as in Black Mirror and also in Black Panther.
And Black Panther,
of showing he's working things out in his mind and trying to figure out how to get through this crazy situation he's in.
Yeah, and I tell you what, the scene where he's being pulled down into the sunken place when he's been hypnotized, just that fear that he's showing in his face, and the tears and stuff like that, but he can't control his body. I mean,
yeah,
that was
it felt really raw.
So it's hard to say that there would possibly be a no ma'am in this movie.
I got one.
Okay,
I got a no ma'am. Okay, so Caleb Landry Jones, who plays the brother in the family, everyone else does such a good job of, I feel like, starting out being this like trustworthy.
Yeah.
There's something off about them, but you can't quite put your finger on it because they're being so nice and friendly. But then he comes in and he's just crazy from the get-go. I mean, he's the one where I was like, okay, you got to go. There's nothing good coming from this with that crazy brother in the family. So yeah, his character, I felt like was a little, if there was any character who kind of took me out of the story, it was maybe him. Whenever he was on screen, I was like, this is a crazy person. You got to leave this house. These people are going to straight up kill you. And I wish that he had either played it a little cooler at first to still lull you into thinking that this is a safe situation.
Yeah, he's weird from the get-go.
Right. Or just not being included at all. I don't know really what he added to the story. And his performance, I think he could have been a little more subtle in his performance and then worked up to being this crazy person.
Great call.
Yeah, for sure. So we got to rate Get Out. How many reels are you going to give it, Mike?
I'm giving it 3 reels.
Okay.
I definitely think this is a get it girl. I think that everybody should see this. It's definitely worth your time.
Cool. I only gave 2 movies of the 9 we're talking about tonight 4 reels.
Okay.
And this is one of them. This is a 4-reeler for me.
It hit you that hard.
It hit me hard because when I go to movies, I go because I like to be entertained. I like to go to movies that make me think about something, and I like when movies make me laugh because
Yeah.
I like comedy. And this movie is one of those rare movies that made me do all three. I had a blast watching it. It really made me think and reflect on where we are as a culture.
Mhm.
And there were some of the funniest moments of any movie this past year in this. I mean, if I could pick a movie to win Best Picture, this would be the one of the 9.
All right. Well, Jordan Peele, if you're out there, you are for real, my friend.
For reals. For realer.
So flying on down the list here, next we are at Lady Bird.
Lady Bird. Yeah, this is about a young girl, coming of age, high school story, trying to figure out her sense of self, sense of identity, struggling with her relationship with her mom, with her family, and also trying to figure out how she fits in to school. And of course, wouldn't be a coming of age story in the mid 2000s without a gay boyfriend.
Right?
Right? She has to deal with that. But really, this movie is about finding yourself, trying to figure out who you are. And what better time to do that than in high school, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this movie? What are your thoughts on Lady Bird?
So Lady Bird to me is one of those movies that feels like it's just real. Yeah, so I liked the realness of this movie.
Right. Yeah, me too. Especially since I'm around the same age as Lady Bird was I was in high school in the mid 2000s and was trying to navigate relationships with my family members and was trying to find that sense of identity. Now, for me, it ended up being as a gay person. For Lady Bird, it was for different things, but we do that in high school, trying to figure out who we are, trying to establish that sense of identity and trying to figure out what makes us different and unique and special. And I really liked that about this movie. And I really loved the family dynamic because in movies, it's always perfect families.
Right.
Or it's abusive families, or it's abusive families learning to become perfect families.
Yeah.
I thought this movie did a really good job of showing the actual flaws that were there in a family dynamic. The mom so badly wants to show Lady Bird love, but there's something maybe in her own past that keeps her from being able to do it effectively. And so she does things that do more harm than good.
Yeah.
But you can tell it comes from a place she just wants her daughter to be safe and to be happy.
Something that I took from this movie is just I could definitely see some echoes of their relationship in dealing with my own mother.
But to your point, I mean, that's what I think was so great about this movie is I think no matter what your life experience is, this is such a good coming of age story that I think anyone can see part of their own experience and part of their own lives in it. It's not some caricature that over dramatizes the teenage years. It makes it feel very real and grounded and brings it, for me at least, brought out a lot of my own experiences, which was really powerful.
Yeah, ditto.
For sure.
So what kind of shade do you want to throw at this one?
Okay, so my shadiest take for Lady Bird, as grounded and as real as it felt, it did get into the trope that a lot of coming of age stories get into where the character has to choose between fitting in with the cute, popular, rich crowd or sticking with her less attractive, not rich, but good friend.
Right.
And I wish that movies would show more of a real, it's not always that clear which one is the right one to choose in
Not
real
every
life.
school has the popular kids that are so pretty.
Exactly. And I just felt that was a little like, okay, that was the one part of the movie where I felt like they were going into typical coming of age story tropes.
Right.
Is how they portrayed the friend groups. It's not always the pretty popular people. Sometimes those people are really nice and genuine, and sometimes, it's not always clear where you should go. And I wish they had found a way to show that. I think they did that with her relationships with the boys. And the two guys she was interested in. I did think there was a little more complexity there. With the friends, I just felt like that was lacking a little.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. So who slayed Lady Bird? Who slayed Bird?
I'm gonna give it to Laurie Metcalf, the woman who played the mom, and we know her from Roseanne and then Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is her character in here is kind of similar to the mom, to Sheldon's mom that she plays in Big Bang Theory, as far as that overbearing mother type. But
No, it was a super strong performance. If she wins the Oscar, I won't be mad at all about it because she did a really good job of portraying that love for Lady Bird.
Right.
But also just being so, like, some of the things she said, I was like, oh my gosh, how could you say that to your daughter? And the way she exuded that performance was just really amazing.
Is there a no ma'am to this movie?
There is, and you know what? I hate to do this, but Timothée Chalamet, and you know what? It has nothing to do with his performance. It's because I saw Call Me by Your Name maybe like just a week before I saw this movie. And so it was hard for me to buy the twink from Call Me by Your Name as this douchey womanizing bro. Now he did hang out at cafes a lot in this movie, so that was very transferable from Call Me by Your Name. But you can't go from, railing Army Hammer and a peach in one movie and then being, the leather jacket wearing
can't remember how many girls he slept
right
with.
In this one. Like, it just, I don't know, that more has to do with how close I saw these movies together, because he actually was great in it. Just seeing, I was like, wait, isn't that the Call Me by Your Name twink?
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
They were maybe a little too close together.
Yeah. So let's rate this one, Mike.
All right. I gave this one 3 reels. Yeah, it's definitely a get it girl.
Well, Mike, I said that I only had 2 of the 9 movies were the 4-reelers for me.
Yeah.
This is the other one.
All right.
I loved this movie. And I'll be honest, going into it, it was one that I was probably one of the ones I was least excited to see of these 9 movies. And just because I hadn't seen anything about it that got me excited, but just how relatable it was, how interesting it was, especially Laurie Metcalf and that family dynamic. I had all the feels coming out of this movie, and it really made me think and reflect and really hit me personally. And so 4 reels, it was great.
He feels those reels.
I feels the reels.
All right.
Feels the reels.
So these last couple movies have been winners, but now we're on to Phantom Thread.
Phantom Thread.
So I need you to tell me, what is Phantom Thread about?
Listen, Phantom Thread is about this old, controlling fashion designer in 1950s London who has to have complete control of everything in his world. And then this young little Miss Thang waitress comes into his life, as young little Miss Thang waitresses do, and turns his life upside down. She's going to be the one to control this man. She is going to take over his life. These 2 psychopaths just go back and forth in this love story until she decides to just start poisoning him, getting him sick all the time, and he just has to be babied by her. And it's just a little odd love story between 2 crazy people, is what I found it to be. What are your thoughts on it, Mike?
So this movie to me is just, it's a crazy, twisted love story about 2 people that I don't think I'd ever want to know.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So, supposedly this could be Daniel Day-Lewis's last film.
That's what he says.
So, for that alone, I think it was worth seeing.
Yeah.
To see how, is he ending on a high note? I think he was happy with his performance. So that's good for him. If you're somebody who's really into period piece films, I think that you would enjoy this. If you're into fashion, I think you would enjoy this. But overall, for me, it didn't hit all the right notes for me to consider it something that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, this is one where there's so many pieces of this movie that I know were great, right? I know Daniel Day-Lewis always brings his A game to any movie he's in.
Right.
The score was beautiful. It was such a good score. I was really enchanted by some of the fashion and the scenes where you were kind of put in this world in 1950s London. But it's just not for me. I don't know. Like the whole of the movie was not as good as some of the parts that I may have enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I may, it was the last of these movies I saw. I was the least excited to see it. And so maybe I brought in some baggage. And Paul Thomas Anderson, earlier I said Christopher Nolan, his movies always resonate with me and I always enjoy them. Paul Thomas Anderson's kind of the opposite. His movies don't really hit me that right way. I know they're good, if not great, but for me, they just don't quite do it for me.
So I'm guessing there's some shade to be thrown then.
There is absolutely some shade to be thrown. And I just need to get this off my chest, Mike.
Get it off.
This is our movie. How is this not a gay movie? This is the gayest movie of the year, Mike. It was about a fashion designer falling for a little young thing, taking this little young thing into his house. I think I would have liked this movie a lot more if it was a gay movie. Like, it would have played more into this kind of forbidden love kind of thing.
Right.
That it was trying to do with them having trouble connecting. It could have been a little more mysterious because it's the 50s. It's not okay for that kind of relationship to exist. So maybe they both resisted a little bit more. I don't know. I feel like that little component, and maybe this is just me being selfish, but I feel like if the female younger character was a twink, sure. I feel like that would have made the movie a little more interesting because it just would have added something a little more for me.
Right. Well, and you still could have played with the idea of, maybe he has, maybe the young man that he's bringing into his life has a figure that maybe he makes him wear the dress, model the dresses for him and stuff like that.
Well, and so much of the movie is, this designer that Daniel Day-Lewis plays is trying to exude this confidence and trying to exude all this control over the world. And maybe this young man is someone who has that confidence, who is able to do that. And he is drawn to that, but doesn't want to succumb to it. I just feel like that little detail selfishly could have made this a better movie. They stole our movie, Mike. They stole our movie.
I totally would have seen that.
Anyway, so who slayed this movie for you, Mike? Who slayed Phantom Thread?
Given that this is very possibly his last movie, I'm going to give it to Daniel Day-Lewis.
Well, he actually helped Paul Thomas Anderson create everything about this character, like the name of the character, he helped write this character.
Can we address the name for a second?
Reynolds Woodcock, also a great gay name.
Thank you.
Right. I'm telling you, this was our movie. They stole it from us.
All right. So, do you have a no, ma'am?
I hate to say this, but his sister in the movie, played by Leslie Manville, who has an Academy Award nomination for that role. And it's less about her performance, I think, and more about some of the other performances that are up for the supporting actress this year.
Yeah.
So,
I would not have considered that an Oscar nominated role.
Yeah, me neither. Because Laurie Metcalf, bam,
right.
So amazing. Allison Janney in I, Tonya.
Yeah.
That is such a great role. And this role it was a little more subtle than those. And there was some greatness in that subtlety, but I don't know if it's best supporting actress worthy for me. I think that it's hard to really shine when you're acting next to Daniel Day-Lewis. I mean, maybe if there was a lesser actor in that role, she would shine more for me, but with him in that role, anytime he's on screen, that's really all I'm focused on is how amazing he is. So let's rate this one. How many reels are you giving Phantom Thread?
I'm actually giving it 2.5 reels.
Okay.
It still needs plenty of work. But I'm comparing the rating of this on what I gave to Darkest Hour.
Yeah.
And I think if I were recommending one over the other, I would recommend this one over Darkest Hour.
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
Although I still feel like this is a movie that was maybe worthy of Best Actor nomination, but I don't think Best Picture.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I started a little lower on it, but I'll give it a 2.5 for the same reason. it needs work for it to be worth it for me to recommend to someone
Yeah.
to see, but it's got a good premise there. It just I know I can see how it executed that premise really well for other people's sensibilities. It didn't do it for mine. Wasn't quite there. So it would need work to get there for me. So 2.5 reels
All
for
right.
this guy.
All right, I'm with you there. So moving along, the next movie is The Post. So Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, so listen, this is all you need to know about this movie. You got Steven Spielberg, you got Tom Hanks, you got Meryl Streep. That's if you're not sold on that, I don't know what to tell you, but here's what I will tell you. Meryl Streep, this is the fiercest she's been since she was Miranda Priestley. She's kind of in a Miranda Priestley role running
Kind
this
of, yeah.
newspaper. Yeah. So The Post is about the Washington Post decision on whether or not they're going to release the Pentagon Papers back in the 70s, which implicated several presidential administrations in keeping from the public exactly how we were doing in Vietnam. And this was a huge issue back when it happened. It's been covered in other movies too, in All the President's Men, I think most famously. But Meryl Streep plays this really strong, almost kind of a Miranda Priestley role again, running the newspaper, making the decision on whether or not to publish, and all the drama that goes into whether or not they're going to fight for the First Amendment or succumb to what the government tells them they need to do to protect this secret. So big ensemble cast, lots of people that I didn't even know were in this movie going into it, but really led, I think, by Meryl Streep. Strong performance by Tom Hanks, but Meryl's movie, I think, overall, but very strong supporting characters as well. What were your thoughts on this one, Mike?
Well, there's a reason why she was nominated for Best Actress again.
Correct.
You know, I ended up seeing this movie twice. To be honest, I didn't know a whole lot of what the plot of the movie was before I went into it. I just knew that it was a new movie coming out with, Spielberg, Hanks, and Streep, and I was like, I gotta see it. So it wasn't until I was watching it that I actually knew what the movie was about.
Yeah, I'm always ready to worship at the altar of Meryl Streep. And I love Steven Spielberg in everything that he does. Tom Hanks is one of the best actors working. And so I will say that, maybe this film didn't start with, I think this could have been not great if put in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
But Steven Spielberg, I don't think is capable of making a terrible movie. He can take any story and think of the most compelling way to tell it. Maybe it's just for a lot of people, this isn't the most compelling story to start with.
I mean, I guess I knew it wasn't going to be, E.T. or Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
But
it was weird when the raptors from Jurassic Park came into the newsroom, though.
I thought that was a little odd.
Yeah,
I don't think that was historically accurate.
Well, the things we do to build a shared universe these days.
Yeah.
But I really thought that the performances from everyone, they really brought it. And it's just a bunch of strong actors coming together with a really strong and capable director. And they can take something like reviewing thousands of documents on the floor of your living room and make it kind of compelling. Yeah. Right. They can take that. Like, that's a masterclass. And
who's got that page? I've got.
Exactly. Yeah. That should be the most boring movie ever. But because of just the way Spielberg can build tension, I really was invested. I found myself like wanting to jump in the living room with them and help find the page, right? Because I feel like the actors were just really compelling, really selling it. He did a good job of building up the drama of this event for people. Like, I didn't really know the story either, but I also really love following politics and journalism and that kind of stuff. And so for me, that is really interesting. I liked the tension between, okay, do we publish these papers and protect and uphold the First Amendment and really go after, what we believe is right? Or do we do what we think is safe and not publish it and do what the government says? And I think that's something that's really an interesting and salient topic now with everything that's going on with Trump and all the crazy Russia stuff,
Right.
and also, a woman being in power and trying to be a powerful figure with all these dominant men around her trying to tell her what's right and what she needs to do, and whether or not she has the capabilities of making the best decision. I think that also plays into a lot of what's going on in the world right now, and how women are really stepping up despite being told for, generations,
Right.
that they didn't know what they were doing. I thought that was really salient now as well.
And I don't know if that was a just following the beat of what actually happened, or if it was emphasized as a planned subplot to the movie. But in today's climate, that it really resonated.
Yeah, and so I think because of just how much it does resonate with what's going on right now, I think that even bumped it up a little bit for me, because
Yeah.
I wasn't alive when all that stuff was going down in the 70s, but I am seeing all the things that are happening right now, and seeing that it's happened. Similar kinds of things have happened before, and just seeing these figures from back then and how they handled their own version of these constitutional crises. Like, I thought that was really powerful with everything that's going on right now.
With as much as it sounds like you enjoyed this movie, do you have any shade to throw on it?
I mean, my shade is a technical thing. I'm kind of tired of, at the end of movies, they have, especially movies that are based on a true story, they do that thing where they tell you in text what happened to every character after the movie, and kind of like basically tell you everything that happened after. And I'm just like, okay, come on. Like, you had your story to tell, just tell that story. If I want to figure out what happened after, I can do that. And I often do. I'll look up and see, what happened to that person afterwards, if they're still around, what they're doing now, and all that kind of stuff. I don't need that in the movie anymore, especially with the access we have to information.
Right.
I can go on the internet and find that out. So it's that's a trope that I feel like we need to leave in the past. We don't need that anymore. So don't give me the text at the end of the movie. But I will let you tell us who slayed the post, who killed this one.
Well, can we just both agree that it's
Meryl Streep?
It's Meryl.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Meryl's one of those people that I feel like every year she gets nominated for an Oscar despite what the role is and the quality of it. And so there are years where she gets nominated, it's like, really?
Into the Woods.
Exactly. And then there's years where it's like, okay, she earned it. This is an earned nomination. This one she earned. Like, I feel like this was a definitely great performance of hers. But she was so good in this. And so, yeah, I loved her in it. She was awesome.
Awesome. Well, how about a no, ma'am? Anybody stand out to you that way?
So there were some scenes where they were trying to portray Nixon's take on everything that was happening. And whenever they would do that, they did this thing where they had the real audio of President Nixon talking to people on the phone, but they did the way they shot it was they shot through the back of a window into the White House, and whatever actor was portraying the back of Nixon, he was so animated and just like, kind of, it was almost funny how he was like waving his hands around and getting all animated on these phone calls. And I was like, okay, calm down, girl.
Yeah.
Like, I doubt Nixon was, and even if he was, come on, like, play it down a little bit, rein it in. So Mike, let's rate the post.
I bumped up my rating.
You bumped it up.
I bumped it up. Originally going into this, I had given it a 2. I was giving it a 2.5 in my head, but after seeing it again and reflecting, I have bumped it up to a 3. I am glad I saw it again, and I would definitely still recommend somebody go out and see it.
Yeah. I gave it a 3 as well, which actually I was a little disappointed in. Going into this movie, I was expecting to love it.
Yeah.
This movie is right up my alley with Meryl, Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, like political drama. Like, I eat all that up. So I was expecting this to be a 4 reel. So I'm actually not disappointed it's only 3 for me.
Yeah.
It's a get it, girl. It's a solid movie. If someone was asking me if they should see it, I would say absolutely. You gotta see this movie. but especially with how relevant it is right now. But it just wasn't quite as great as I was hoping it would be.
So the next movie on the list is one of my personal favorites, The Shape of Water. But why don't you tell our listeners what this one's about?
Okay, so this is a bunch of misfits trying to help a fish man escape the government. You know, something all of us can relate to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we got Sally Hawkins playing a mute. She and her friend Octavia Spencer are cleaning ladies at a government facility, and they, while working, encounter this fish creature that the government has captured. And Sally takes a liking to this creature and builds a relationship with it, sees us being mistreated, and so she works with Octavia and her gay neighbor, Richard Jenkins, to free the creature. And in it, actually realizes that they're not just friends, but she falls in love with the fish creature, sees a lot of herself in it, and a lot of it in herself, literally and figuratively. and then so it's all about these kind of people who maybe don't belong in their time or in their place coming together to show love conquering hate. What are your thoughts?
This movie I thought was visually stunning. This was a Guillermo del Toro movie, which a lot of people love everything that he puts out. I'm kind of hit or miss, but really, this movie it's magical, and you have two characters falling in love from completely different worlds that don't say a word to each other. It's another period piece. I think it takes place in the 60s, maybe early 60s or late 50s.
So what I really like about this movie is these characters have a sense of not really fitting in with the times that they're living in. And we see that portrayed in different ways.
Right.
So I actually really liked the Richard Jenkins neighbor character. I thought that was the most interesting gay character in a year where we see a lot of gay characters on this list. I really liked him because you can see that heartbreak in his eyes, knowing that he will never be able to get that true happiness that he's looking for as a gay man living in the 50s or 60s.
Right. Is there any shade to this that you can throw at this movie?
I feel like all the shade that's being thrown at this movie does have to do with the sex scene between the sea creature and Eliza.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Was it necessary? Do you think it really added something to the story?
No, it didn't. And in fact, that entire scene actually kind of took me out of it a little bit.
I mean, if you're going to have them bone, I at least wanted to see what the dong looked like. They didn't even show it.
Yeah, that's not fair.
That's not fair. I want to see some sea dong. But so that's my shade. I really don't think that scene was necessary. I think it only served to maybe turn audiences away.
Yeah.
I don't think it brought people in. I don't think anyone was brought in by that.
Nah.
Unfortunately. So, who slayed this movie for you?
You know, I'm gonna go with Sally Hawkins. To go through the entire movie without saying a word, I thought was amazing. There again, she's acting through her expression of emotion and body gestures and stuff like that. I think that takes skill.
Yeah, I mean, I could have memorized those lines, but I don't know if I could have acted as well as that. Like she really did bring it, and just the vulnerability, the pain you see in her face, and then the moments of hope and love and care, like really being able to portray that so vividly was really awesome. But she really did bring it to a role where she literally had no words, but communicated so well. And that's something that people who are saying lines of dialogue struggle to sometimes do. Sometimes they can't even communicate the message they're trying to get across with their words. And she was able to communicate everything so perfectly. I felt like I always knew what that character was trying to say without her ever saying a thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a whole level of difficulty that a lot of people wouldn't be able to do. And there's something about just she has a very charming presence. And I think that just made it a little easier to relate to the character. Like, I feel like Sally Hawkins has a very naturally charming, like,
Right. I mean, she plays the mom in Paddington. Of course, she's charming.
oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure she's great in that.
In a movie that has a lot of powerful, roles and acting and stuff like that, do you have a no ma'am for this one?
Oh, absolutely, I do. I would say, I would say my no ma'am. So Michael Stuhlbarg's in this one as well, playing the Russian scientist, and he's great. But he encounters his Russian handlers, and they're just so the stereotypical Russian handler, Soviet handler trope. I don't know how necessary that was. I felt like that could have been better served by them being this presence that you knew were there, but didn't necessarily see them till maybe that last scene you see him in the movie,
Right
when they're going to kill him. So maybe there are hints that they exist, and he's struggling with that without them necessarily having to be there to play that kind of tropey role.
Right. More of a threatening presence than an actual.
Right. It's one of those things where not seeing them would maybe have more of an impact than seeing this typical Hollywood produced Soviet
No,
spy
that's good.
person. Yeah. So that's my no ma'am of this movie. I didn't think those characters were the most necessary or the best used. But anyway, we need to rate this one, Mike.
Like you, I only gave 2 movies 4 reels. And to me, this one was my second 4 reels.
4-reeler.
It was a 4-reeler to me. For a while, I was going back and forth on whether or not this was my favorite or Call Me By Your Name. And I do think that this was my favorite movie on the list.
Okay.
I just fell in love with the characters and the story. It was a very very well-rounded group of people to follow in this story.
Sure. I will say this for The Shape of Water. It had the best pussy eating scene of any movie in 2017.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, well, the creature eats Richard Jenkins' cat.
Yeah.
His pussy.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I would see that in this movie, but I did, and it was great. But I did give this a little bit less love than you did. I would give it a 3.5 because it does have flaws. It didn't execute everything perfectly. And for me, a 4-reeler, it would have to be really hard for me to find the things that I would change about a movie. And I can find some things I would change about this one.
Absolutely fair.
Yeah, I would change I would get rid of the sex scene. But it's not just that. I mean, I would add maybe a little more depth of character to the creature. I think they could have done a little more development with his character. I thought I didn't see what about him that she was into other than the fact that he was also kind of an outcast.
Gotcha.
So I would have liked to see more development of that relationship. If you're going to try to sell me on that being a romantic relationship, I wish I would have seen more out of how they bonded other than them just being mutual outcasts. And so for that, I mean, I have to give it a 3.5. If someone asks me if they got to see this movie, get it, girl. Get your ass to that movie.
Awesome. Well, we are almost done, Ryan. We have gone through 8. We got one more.
Oh, praise Jesus.
I know, right?
It's like running a marathon.
Thank you all if you are still there. If you've hit pause and came back later, it is just fine. I understand.
Listen, each of these movies is about 2 hours. We went and saw all of them. What is that? Like 20 hours almost of movies that we saw.
And we did it for you.
For you.
Yeah.
So you're only having to listen to this little podcast to get a taste of these movies.
And so now we've got one more to talk to you about, and that is 3 Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Missouri.
Jesus, that's a long name.
It's such a long title.
Yeah.
Do you like a movie with a long title, or do you prefer a shorter, heftier title?
It depends. If the font is thick enough.
Yeah. It's not the size of the text, it's the shape of the font, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Give us a skinny on 3 Billboards.
Well, Mike, Three Billboards is the story of a mother who lost her child to a violent crime and feels like the local police have not done enough to try to solve the murder. So she gets frustrated and decides to purchase three billboards, hence the title,
Correct.
calling out the police for not doing enough to solve her child's murder. That launches a chain of events that throw this little town into all kinds of disarray. And all the characters struggle with how they handle each other, how they handle this very sensitive issue that's happening, how they understand each other, and how they manage the anger and the frustration they feel over how everything has played out. So Frances McDormand's character is frustrated that the police haven't done enough. The police are frustrated that she doesn't see that this is more complicated than just finding the guy. Right. So that's the gist of the movie. And so how all these characters deal with that and then some other issues that emerge are the crux of this movie.
I thought this movie was extremely emotional. Like, I was surprised to find out that it wasn't based on a true story. I'm glad to know that it wasn't based on a true story, but it just seems like that kind of movie where, ripped from the headlines or something like that. But I tell you, I really, really felt for Frances McDermott's character in this movie. McDormand. What'd I say?
McDermott.
Yeah. Okay. As a father and a father of a daughter, I can totally understand how this kind of tragedy could lead somebody to the brink of despair of just, what can I do when no one else is doing this for me? Yeah, man, this movie really hit me in the heart.
Yeah, what I really liked was I felt like the whole movie was a play on really bad things happen in our lives, and how do we react to those? Do we react with hatred and anger, and what does that cause when we react that way? Or do we react with grace and forgiveness, and what happens when we react that way? And so I loved how this movie showed those moments of pure just anger,
right,
but balancing out with some of that grace and some of that forgiveness and some of that understanding each other as humans.
So is there, we've kind of talked a lot about some of the positive and negatives, but is there any specific shade that you would throw at this?
Yeah, I mean, so Sam Rockwell, there's a scene where he gets burned in a police station. Frances McDormand, getting frustrated with the police, decides to light up the police station. She thinks no one's in the station because it's late at night, but it turns out Sam Rockwell's in there. And so she's responsible for him getting horribly disfigured. And in the very last scene of the movie, the two of them are together, and she confesses to him that she's the one who caused him to get disfigured. And I'm all for growth of characters and everything, but I don't know, if someone had revealed that to me,
yeah,
I feel like I would have reverted back a little bit. Like, I would have come for her had she told me that she almost killed me and caused me to be horribly disfigured. I don't really believe the transformation that much that he's all of a sudden cool with the fact that she did that.
There would have at least been some words.
Oh, there would have been some harsh words. A lot of bad words.
Yeah.
So who slayed this movie for you, Mike?
If I had to say anybody slayed in this movie, I would definitely go Woody Harrelson. Dealing with this grieving mother and dealing with his own sickness throughout the whole thing, he seems to keep somewhat of a positive outlook. I mean, you see him interact with his wife and kids and stuff like that, and it seems like their life is fine, but then he goes and kills himself so he doesn't have to let them see him suffer and as he gets sicker. And I think that the way that Woody Harrelson portrayed that was well done.
I like the notes he left for people. I really liked how there was some humor in there. It was not what you would expect from suicide notes. He tries to
Right.
even like be a little playful with the note he leaves for his wife, even though he has that heartbreaking decision that he makes to end his life without telling her
Right.
anything. And so he just really shakes up everything.
Do you have any no ma'ams for this one?
I do, in a really well acted movie, it's hard to find a no man, but John Hawkes, who was Frances McDormand's ex-husband in the movie,
Oh yeah.
and not even really his performance, it's more of, so he has that little girl that he's dating now, and I just can't, that took me out of it. Like, if they were going to have that older dude with the young, like his daughter's age kind of girl that he's dating,
Yeah.
I feel like he would have to look a little more like an attractive daddy instead of like,
Well, it is a small town. Pickens might be slim.
I'm sure Pickens is slim, but still, man, like that was like every time I saw that, I just was taken out. I was like, I don't know. And it's not even implied that he has like money or anything. Like he's just there. And so, I don't know. That was not the best casting choice. I think they should have gotten someone who looked a little bit more like maybe a rugged daddy who a little girl like that would go after.
Yeah, maybe like George Clooney.
Yeah.
Like that would have been believable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, small town George Clooney with a young thing. I can buy that.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead, rate this one. Rate 3 billboards for us, Mike.
I gave it a 3.5.
Okay.
It's a get it in a half. It's a heartfelt movie that to some degree has a resolve. But yeah, I definitely think it's worth seeing.
Yeah, I'll give it 3 stars. I was going a little higher off the first viewing, and I think I'm going to go a little lower now just because as I talk about and think about some of the flaws with the movie and some of the character development and how believable and how much I bought it. I don't know. I think I'm going down to a 3. Really good movie. Get it, girl. Solid for sure, but just not quite at that higher level that maybe I thought it was when I first saw it. So I'm going to take it down a peg, but still really, really good. Definitely best picture nomination worthy, but not the one I would pick to win for sure.
Well, before we wrap it up here, let's give out our dose of recommendations.
Yes, queen.
Yes, queen.
Yes.
We are tired queens.
Tired queens.
But queens nonetheless. Go ahead and give me yours.
Actually, Mike, one of my favorite movie events is coming up this weekend. I'm so excited to go. It's at the Gateway Film Center, and it's the Hump Film Festival. So Hump Film Festival is a amateur porn film festival that Dan Savage, who is right. So Dan Savage is a sex and relationship advice columnist who also has a podcast. And he is also famous in the gay community for starting the It Gets Better campaign a few years back. And the concept of the Hump Film Festival is he has people just submit amateur porn movies, and it's not just straight up porn. It's sometimes exploring sexuality through different perspectives. So some of the films, and they're all 5 minutes or less. There's about 20 films. Some explore certain kinks. Some explore certain sexualities. So
it's not all gay.
No, it has straight, gay, queer, trans, everything you can imagine. And really is very interesting. There's some that are really funny and some that are, meant to be funny.
Right.
There's some that are meant to make you think. There's some that will make you cringe. There's, depending on your own tastes and what you're into, there's some that'll really maybe turn you on. And so that's what I like about it is it's kind of everything under the sun all in this. And what's great about it is it tours America, and a lot of the proceeds from the ticket sales actually go to the people who submitted the films. And so that's really cool that Dan Savage gives them this platform and then also shares in the profits from the event to give back to them. But this will be my third time going. I've had a blast every time I've gone, and so can't recommend it enough.
Awesome. So if you're in Columbus, that's this weekend, Friday and Saturday, I think,
Yeah,
right?
March 2nd and 3rd at the Gateway Film Center.
Awesome. Well, my recommendation this week is I wanted to highlight a singer-songwriter by the name of Tom Goss. He did a song a few years ago called Bears. Tom is a chaser, so you know that that's kind of close to my heart there. But anyway, so he's been working on new music. A couple years ago, he played the Pride Festival here in Columbus. But anyway, you should check out his music, tomgossmusic.com, and maybe one of these days we'll get him to submit some music for the show. But
I need to listen to this Bear song.
yeah, it's you should see the video.
I should listen to this Bear song.
You should.
No, I'll have to check it out for sure.
Fair enough. So, all right. Well, I think that's going to about do it this week. Now, make sure you tune in
Sunday night
to the Oscars.
Yeah.
I am going to do my best to do some live tweeting. So if you're not already following, make sure you are at Real Gay on Twitter.
Make sure you're Real Gay in life and follow Real Gay on Twitter.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. We're also on Instagram and Facebook.
Yes.
All right. So, all right, everybody. Thank you very much. Tune into the Oscars. Check us out next Wednesday. And as always, thanks for listening. And we hope your day is real gay.
Real Gay, y'all.